the seduction, a dance of desire and deception. Are you ready to dive into a world where passion ignites, boundaries blur, and desire reigns supreme? Prepare to be captivated by a tale of forbidden cravings, unspoken desires, and the intoxicating allure of the unknown. His breath, a warm caress against my skin, sent shivers down my spine. Damien's hands, firm and possessive, pulled me closer, molding my body against his. His scent, a heady blend of masculinity and raw power, enveloped me, intoxicating my senses and making my head spin. The sheer intensity of his presence was overwhelming. Sophia watched, her lips parted in a silent invitation, her dark eyes burning with a dangerous curiosity. The dim light danced across her face, casting shadows that highlighted the flush creeping up her neck. There was something in her expression, an unspoken challenge, an undeniable hunger that mirrored my own. I could feel her gaze tracing the heat between Damien and me, drawn in by the undeniable magnetism that sparked between us. Damien's fingers tightened around my waist, his pulse a frantic rhythm against mine, a steady beat of want and surrender. My own breath hitched as I turned to Sophia, my fingers tracing down the delicate curve of her arm, slow, teasing, testing the electricity that buzzed between us. Her skin was warm beneath my touch, her breath shallow as she leaned in just enough to make my pulse jump. "This is what you wanted, isn't it?" I murmured, my voice a whisper, a promise that hung heavy in the air. Sophia's breath hitched, her lashes fluttering as she hesitated just for a moment before tilting her chin ever so slightly, an unspoken yes that sealed our fate. Damien exhaled sharply, his grip flexing against my waist, his restraint slipping like sand through his fingers. His chest rose and fell in deep, uneven breaths, his lips hovering just inches from my neck. I could feel the heat radiating off him, the tension crackling in the air, thick and undeniable. Sophia reached for me, her fingers skimming over the back of my hand before tangling in my wrist, pulling me closer. Her lips, soft and hesitant at first, brushed against mine, a teasing whisper of something new, something forbidden. I deepened the kiss, slow and deliberate, savoring the taste of her surrender. A quiet, needy moan slipped from her lips, melting against mine. And just like that, the last barrier between us shattered, crumbling into something primal, something inevitable. Nights were the worst, a torment of restless longing. Lying in bed, my skin burned with a hunger that had no outlet. Cold sheets, quiet evenings. None of it suited me. I wasn't the kind of woman to let desire wither into something I pretended not to need. I wanted it. I craved it. The slow, unbearable build of anticipation, the heavy weight of a gaze tracing every inch of me, the kind of heat that made my breath hitch and my skin prickle, the way a stolen touch could leave me restless for hours, the memory of heat against my skin lingering far too long. And then I saw him, Damien. He was outside, shirtless, working on his car, strong, effortless. The muscles in his arms flexed with each movement, the sheen of sweat glistening under the late afternoon sun, completely unaware of the way he made my stomach tighten with want. I stood by the window, my teeth grazing my bottom lip, heat curling low in my belly. It had been too long since I'd felt a man's weight pressing me down, too long since I had lost myself in the kind of passion that left me shaking. I wasn't reckless. I knew how to take my time, how to build tension until it became unbearable. It started with a glance held a second too long, a silent invitation that lingered in the air, a stretch that arched my back just enough when I knew he was looking, a deliberate display of my curves. The hem of my dress riding high enough to tease, to make him wonder what lay beneath. An innocent laugh that lingered as my fingers trailed down his arm, just barely, a fleeting touch that ignited a fire within him. A simple touch, but his reaction said it all. The sharp intake of breath, the tightening of his jaw, the way his eyes darkened just enough to tell me he noticed. And then, I pushed further, testing the boundaries of his desire. A casual walk past his garage, my scent lingering as I slowed just enough to glance over my shoulder, a silent promise of what could be. The way his gaze followed me sent a thrill down my spine, a confirmation of my power. One evening, I let my dress slip just enough off my shoulder while adjusting the strap, the bare skin exposed for just a moment too long before I fixed it. a deliberate act of temptation. His eyes flickered to the curve of my collarbone, his fingers tightening around the wrench he held. I could feel it, the shift in him, the way his breath grew heavier when I was near. Damien noticed. I could see it in the way his eyes flickered to me when he thought I wasn't looking. A stolen glance filled with longing. The way his breath hitched when I leaned in too close, a silent acknowledgement of the desire that consumed him. The way his jaw tightened when I spoke in low, knowing tones, a desperate attempt to maintain control. He tried to resist, but the desire was there, thick and undeniable, creeping into every interaction like a wildfire ready to consume us both. And Sophia, sweet, unsuspecting Sophia, had no idea. She greeted me with bright smiles, completely unaware of the fire simmering beneath the surface. Unaware that every time Damien looked at me, it wasn't just casual. It was charged. It was dangerous. I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't looking for commitment. I just wanted to feel it again. The pull, the anticipation, the thrill of making a man lose himself completely. The pleasure of knowing that with just a glance, a touch, a whispered word, I could make him forget everything else. I wanted to see him unravel beneath me, surrender to the temptation that was slowly devouring him. And Damien? He was already slipping. His resolve cracking, his loyalty hanging by a thread, his restraint a fragile thing that I was ready to shatter. It started with an opportunity, a chance to seize what I craved. Sophia was out of town, leaving a void that I was eager to fill. Damien was alone, vulnerable to my advances, and I was waiting, patient and ready. I had played the game well, let the tension stretch between us like a rubber band ready to snap, and now it was time to unleash the pent-up desire. An evening walk, the cool air brushing against my skin, heightening the heat simmering inside me. A casual, accidental bump into him on the sidewalk, except we both knew it wasn't an accident. He caught me by the waist, steadying me, his grip firm, warm. His fingers lingered just a second too long, his touch burning through the thin fabric of my dress, branding me in a way that sent a sharp thrill through my body. "You okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern, but something else lingered beneath it. Something darker, something needy. I exhaled slowly, letting my lips part slightly, my chest rising in a way that made his eyes drop, just for a second, just enough to tell me he noticed. I let my fingers slide over his arm, feeling the strength beneath my touch, the tension in his muscles. "Yeah," I murmured, voice soft, inviting, dripping with something unspoken. "Just got a little dizzy." His gaze flickered to my lips. I saw it. I felt it in the way his grip on my waist tightened ever so slightly, the way his throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. He was fighting it. He was losing. "Maybe you should sit down," he said, voice tight, controlled, but barely. "Perfect. My place is just down the street." I tilted my head slightly, my hair spilling over one shoulder, exposing the delicate curve of my neck. I let the moment stretch, my invitation hanging in the charged space between us. "Come inside with me." A hesitation, a second too long. I saw the war in his eyes, the tension in his stance. He was teetering on the edge, one step away from falling. And then he took it. He followed. Of course he did. The lure of the forbidden was too strong to resist. Inside, the air was thick, charged with unspoken desires. The soft glow of the lamp cast warm shadows, making everything feel intimate, like a scene set for something inevitable. I moved deliberately, pouring him a drink, making sure my hip brushed against him as I reached for the glass, a subtle reminder of my presence. His sharp inhale told me he noticed. Every movement was calculated, a dance of seduction, just close enough, just teasing enough, to blur the lines between an accident and an invitation. He took the drink, but his fingers wrapped around the glass with too much tension, his jaw clenched like he was holding back words. Or something else. "What are we doing?" he asked, his voice tight, barely controlled, a desperate plea for reason. I smirked, setting my own glass down, stepping just a little closer, just enough that our bodies nearly touched, a deliberate act of defiance. "Whatever we want," I whispered, my voice a silken promise of pleasure. And then the space between us disappeared, consumed by the fire that had been building for so long. His lips crashed into mine, hungry, desperate, hands gripping my waist, pulling me flush against him as if he had already surrendered to what had been building for so long. A moan slipped from my lips, swallowed by his mouth as my fingers tangled in his hair, tugging just enough to make him groan against me, a symphony of desire. His hands were everywhere, hips, back, thighs, exploring, claiming, pulling me tighter against him as if he couldn't get close enough. My dress slid higher as his fingers skimmed over my bare skin, the heat of his touch setting me ablaze. I pushed him onto the couch, straddling him in one smooth motion, feeling the way his body tensed beneath me, a testament to his desire. His breath was hot against my skin, each kiss leaving a trail of fire, his hands gripping my thighs, fingertips digging in, sending delicious shivers up my spine. I rolled my hips against him, teasing, torturing, reveling in the way he groaned against my mouth, his restraint unraveling with each touch. The rush, the thrill, the way his body responded to mine, helpless against the force of his own desire. His fingers teased, his lips burned, every movement sending pleasure crashing through me like waves. I wanted more, needed more, and he was willing to give it all, lost in the moment. His hands slid up my back, pulling my dress lower, his mouth moving down my neck, sending a shudder through me that made my nails dig into his shoulders. I gasped, arching into him as his teeth grazed my skin, his breath ragged against my collarbone. He groaned, his grip tightening as if he was afraid to let go, afraid that if he did, he'd never have this again. And then Sophia. The knock on my door was sharp, unexpected, slicing through the fevered haze between us. A jolt of reality, a reminder of the consequences of our actions. My pulse jumped as I straightened my dress, smoothing out invisible creases, my breath still uneven. When I opened it, Sophia stood there, but there was no rage, no tears, just something else entirely, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "I know," she said, her voice calm, almost detached. A long silence charged with unspoken words and hidden desires, and then her lips curled into a knowing smile. "I don't want to lose him," she admitted, her voice laced with a hint of vulnerability. "But I also don't want to pretend I don't see what's happening." My breath caught, surprised by her honesty. "Then what do you want?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. She smirked, a glint of daring in her eyes, and for the first time, I saw something in her I hadn't before, a hidden desire waiting to be unleashed. "I want in," she declared, her voice a seductive whisper. Her words sent a new kind of thrill through me, a surge of excitement at the prospect of something even more forbidden. She wasn't here to fight for him, to reclaim what she thought was hers. She was here for something else entirely, something that resonated with my own desires. I took a step closer, my fingers trailing over the back of her hand, testing her reaction. Sophia didn't pull away. If anything, she leaned in, drawn in by the magnetic pull between us. Damien watched, tension rolling off him in waves, a silent observer of the unfolding drama. His breath was shallow, his fists clenched at his sides as if trying to resist the gravity pulling us together. But there was no resistance, only surrender to the inevitable. Sophia reached for me first, her lips brushing mine, tentative, questioning. I deepened it, teasing, inviting her into our world of forbidden desires. Damien groaned, stepping closer, his hands finding my waist, pressing me between them, completing the circle. And just like that, the game changed forever, transforming into something more complex, more dangerous, and infinitely more alluring. Are you ready to explore the depths of your own desires? To challenge the boundaries of pleasure and experience the thrill of the forbidden? Dive deeper into this world of passion and intrigue. Share this story. Ignite the desires of others by sharing this tale of seduction and temptation with your friends and fellow pleasure seekers. Leave a comment. What are your thoughts on this unconventional love triangle? Share your insights and predictions for what's to come. Follow for more. Stay tuned for more stories that push the boundaries of desire and explore the complexities of human connection.